wouldn't say I'm a privacy expert. I'm not at all. But I got into it because of a personal situation I was in. I was in a very not safe situation. So my aim for technology has always been security and privacy.
For those who are new to the channel, welcome to the Data Protection Diaries, and this is the Pub Chats podcast series. Doesn't matter how many times I say that, I still struggle to get it out. I have to slow it down when I say it. In this series, we've been trying, and we are continuing to try to find interesting people from privacy and the security industry that we think have got an interesting story and have got something to talk about. And the idea of this series is to just have a chat with somebody like we're in the pub, which is why we call it the Pub Chat series. Today we're joined by Zoë Rose. Zoë Rose is somebody that I've seen speak a few times. I think she's got a good story. I think she's got some interesting stuff to talk about. She's now looking scared. But I'm going to let Zoë introduce herself. So Zoë is a cybersecurity specialist, ethical hacker, and just all-round cyber enthusiast. I think is probably a good way to describe you. But do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
I mean, I could. You make me sound way cooler than I am. About myself, I've been in the technology industry for over a decade. This is where you compliment me and say, "Oh, you don't look it." But yeah, a lot of people say, "Oh, but how long have you been in security?" And I'll be honest, I got into technology to kind of build it was not. I wouldn't say I'm a privacy expert. I'm not at all. But I got into it because of a personal situation I was in. I was in a very not safe situation. So my aim for technology has always been security and privacy. So I would suppose unofficially I've been in it for about 10 years as well. Officially, I think my first security job title maybe 5 years ago. It depends, because when I owned my own company, I called myself the Supreme Technical Commander. So I don't know if that counts as security or not.
That is the best job title I have ever heard. The Supreme Technical Commander.
Yeah. It's because my company was called Glass Frog, and a group of frogs is called an army. So it was just logical.
I did not know that a group of frogs is called an army.
It is. A group of ferrets is called a business. So technically, I've got a business as well at the moment.
That's amazing. You have. Wait, hang on. We'll come back to ferrets. You're telling me you've got ferrets now.
Okay.
That's awesome. I like that. So, because I suppose one of the questions we always ask people is, how do you get into this? And some people are like, oh, I was born to do cyber. I was coding from the age of 5, and I've always wanted to do this. But everyone comes at it. Lots of people just end up dropping into it. So it sounds like you came at it from a personal angle, and then decided to make that a business thing.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't really, I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. To be honest, to give you context, so I've been researching narcissism lately. I'm all about human behavior and understanding humans, because, that's what security is, right? And I've been reading about narcissism, and there's spectrums of narcissism. There is a point to the story, mind you. There's the bottom of the spectrum, 1 to 3, I think it is on the scale, is narcissism deficit. And then it's healthy narcissism, because there is a degree of narcissism that's healthy. And then there's extreme narcissism, and that's the people that you think of when you think of narcissists. So I probably a decade ago was on the very end of the scale, narcissism deficit. I had very low self-esteem. I had no confidence. I had very awful thoughts about myself, because if you've kind of followed my story, or if you are interested in looking to it, I was in an abusive relationship, and I believed that I was worth nothing, and I believed that I was very stupid. So my goal with getting into security or technology was not because I was like, oh, I've been doing this for years, or I know what I'm doing. It was 100%, I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't know what's out there, and it scares me. And it's been used against me. So I wanted to find a way to protect myself. And through that, and this is the really exciting part, I'm mostly self-taught through YouTube videos. So
Really?
nothing really exciting. That's how I got into it, is I started identifying issues in my own life, my own security and technical practices. And then whilst I was at the company I was working for at the time, I would see different things that I could help and pick up and fix. And I also understood technology, or I felt like I did, better than I understood humans. So it was like I could go into a server room, which was actually more of a server closet, but I'd go into the server room and I would work on the switches and routers and servers, and I'd set them up and, configure them, and they'd listen to me. So that's more what I got into it for. And then after a while, I realized I could use my skills to help other people in that maybe similar, or maybe not the same, but similar situations. And so that's kind of been my goal throughout the last decade, is helping other people to take back control and maybe helping the vulnerable. Sounds really cool, but it does mean that I am not this super elite expert that, as you said, has been coding since I was 5. I didn't even have a computer when I was 5. I played in the dirt with Barbies, so that's the extent of my historic. I did go to college, however. I did go to college after being an IT manager for a few years, and it was brilliant. I loved it. Still paying off that debt, so I don't know.
Because I looked through I had a little sort of delve into your LinkedIn. So I'd seen that you'd done network management, which is obviously at college. So in my head, it was like, oh, so you had the interest, you went to college, you did network management, and then from that comes, the career path that you kind of choose.
Not exactly. Like I went to college in 2013, but I have been working since I was like 18. So I was an IT manager at 19. Although I don't know if my official job title was that, but basically I did IT management, sysadmin, bit of networking here and there, what I understood. And then after that, as I said, my confidence at that point was so low. I honestly believed I wasn't smart enough to do anything. So I went to college to say, I need somebody else to validate that I can do this. I need that piece of paper. And I mean, not to say that there wasn't the value of going to college, mind you. I learned a lot of the things that I was like, never going to use this, I use every day. So there is a huge benefit to it. But the goal in going to college wasn't actually to say, I need to learn everything, this is the career I want. It was, I'm doing this every day, I have no confidence, I need somebody to validate me.
Wow. Yeah. Perfect. I think you've been validated.
Hopefully.
You've done. So you already talked earlier, like at the beginning, when we talked about security being about people. So a lot of people that I think watch this and come to this podcast end up thinking, oh, to be a hacker or to work in security, you have to have all of the technical nous, the matrix green screen of, digits running down it and all that sort of stuff. But a lot about penetration testing and ethical hacking is about people and manipulating people and trying to find information, which is, I'm assuming, is partly what happened in your personal life. Somebody used those processes against you. Do you find that gives you sounds bad, but then gives you the upper hand now, that you can actually start to use that in terms of how you express security to people? I
would say kind of like So the way humans learn is there's multiple different ways, but one of the biggest ones is personal experience. So knowing, from my point of view, knowing how things have been used against me definitely allows me to see from that point of view. You know, I define hackers not in their technical skills, but in their mindset. So my definition of a hacker is somebody that looks at something not for what it's meant to do, but what they can make it do for them. So how they can abuse it, essentially. I know that sounds quite negative, but how they can bypass what it's supposed to and make it work for them. And so I would say security itself, you look at it from different lenses. You know, you look at it, how do I build this resilient? How do I break this? You know, and so I wouldn't say that, and I know a lot of people define a hacker as this elite technical person, but then you come along with a social engineer. Like I just watched a podcast episode with Lisa and Chris Hagnacki, I think is how you say his name, the human hacker. And what he talks about a lot is, you know, the social engineering side, obviously. And he's not talking about all of these different technical skills that he has, all of these different, you know, elite hacking skills. He's talking about, you know, manipulating people, convincing people, using their behaviors against them, understanding them. And that's a huge part of hacking, ethical hacking, even phishing. You know, the very basic start with, I'm sending an email that's going to manipulate someone into taking an action that I want. Yeah, I can be super elite and install this, I don't know, super advanced malware that's going to take down the whole network. But if I can't manipulate the person because I don't know them, I can't relate to them, I can't identify something that's going to convince them my story is true, they're not going to open it, they're not going to click it, and I failed.
Yeah.
The reality is, if you can relate to the people, if you can empathize with the people, if you can go on their social media and say, oh my goodness, Zoe has this ridiculous obsession with ferrets, I'm going to send her a ferret video. If you could do that, I'm going to bloody click on that ferret video, even if I know that, that looks really suspicious, but it's a ferret video, I have to watch it. So if you ever want to hack me, you know, take that approach. But it's the same thing with like building fake profiles. You know, I'm going to look at a profile, somebody add me on social media, and I'm like, that looks really fake. They've got a stock photo or just a general photo taken off Google. They don't really have a story and they don't post consistently. Whereas a recent one I got, somebody added me on my Instagram, it's private, not because I'm like showing all these private things, but because, you know, I don't really need everybody and their dog to follow me. Unless it is their dog, I might follow them back actually. But I had this person add me recently, and it was a brand new account of a lady with a new ferret, and it was really well done, really well done. I mean, to be fair, it could be legitimate, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't. And the way they did it, it was this lovely lady, this adorable ferret, and they even posted pictures every couple days, but there was too much of a pattern to it. And so that's why I'm like, this looks suspicious. But if they'd done it maybe a little bit more sporadically, then, you know, then I'd be like, oh, okay, that's real, and I'd add it, and then they'd, you know, be able to monitor my actions or maybe monitor like my locations if I tagged my location a lot, you know, those sort of things. So I would say I don't even know if I've answered your question, but I would say hacking and ethical hacking and pen testing, a lot of it is the people understanding behavior, understanding reactions, and understanding how to manipulate it. And then my past in relating to that, I would say the most secure environment, the most secure solution involves a very diverse team. Diversity in gender, diversity in like ethnicity, but also points of view and skill sets. So my skill sets are a little weird, I suppose, but I developed those over the years of needing these skills. You know, I did a lot of time looking into open source intelligence by stalking myself and seeing what information I'm giving out. Apologies if it's loud, my ferrets are just running around. But I also have, you know, a background in networking because I really liked being able to deal with hardware because it listened to me, whereas the people didn't. And so my points of view of being a survivor of domestic abuse, of being, you know, a very maybe odd person, it's given me very unique perspectives. Whereas, you know, some of my colleagues, they have more a software development background, and so they'll have this perspective, or maybe they're, you know, they grew up quite well off, and so maybe they had to deal with like those sort of like kidnapping and stalking, and, you know, those sort of things that are everyday realities for celebrities. You know, maybe that will then add that depth and that perspective into the solution. So I think the biggest part of ethical hacking and maybe penetration testing is being human and being able to use your experiences to approach a solution in a way that maybe wasn't thought of before. That makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. And that's the thing. I think when we started this business, I spent 11 years in privacy, so I got the human aspect of privacy and culture, and trying to, you know, educate people, make them feel like it was relevant to them. But I always looked at the security side of our business as in, well, it's technical, you know, it's plugging your laptop in, it's going in through a VPN, it's looking at somebody's network, it's looking at somebody's systems. Mm-hmm. And the more I started talking to people when we started doing this sort of podcast series, was actually when you're talking to the cybersecurity specialists like yourself, that it's that people aspect is so important. And hacking isn't just about, you know, pointing at a network or a system or an application. You know, it is about manipulating people and creating fake ferret profiles to try and, you know, attain enough information that maybe you can guess a password or you can get your way into a building or something like that. And I think it fascinates me, and that's one of the reasons why I was so excited to do this. It's because it interests me. Mm-hmm. Just think, well, I like knowing about it, and like this stuff to me is just sounds like a lot of good fun.
Yeah, so it is. One of the things that I really think is cool is once I was on a show with Scott Helm, and I mean, he's bloody brilliant to begin with, but I got to do an episode with him and a couple of them, and what we did was we investigated the audience using open source intelligence. And the thing that was so bloody cool to me is, I mean, we were, you know, it was ethical, we were allowed to, we got consent, all of that. But it was so cool because I'd be like, okay, I collect all this data and then I present it back to them. And it's little things like, you know, locational data, pictures of family and their names, and then being able to investigate that. To them, it's like, oh, I'm a parent bragging about my child, or celebrating their achievement, or, oh, you know, it's not really that important, it's my flat number for the last 3 years, or, oh, it's this or that, you know. And to them it's not really that important, but then in that context, that greater context, it's such vital, critical information that allows me to build a picture of their life. And I think that, to me, is the coolest part. Used ethically, it's brilliant and fun. Used unethically, it can be quite scary. So I think that's the part that really kind of, I don't know, in a weird way excites me about the industry. You mentioned about hackers, and I just remembered about this tweet that this guy shared. John Jackson, John J Hacking on Twitter. He said, why did you become a hacker? Wrong answers only. I think he posted that yesterday. And a lot of them were about, wearing a black hoodie. Yeah. Which I totally agree with. Clothes are, you want to sell me on something? Like, the reason I started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is because I got to wear the coolest outfits. I love the sport now, but I was like, oh, look at these outfits I get to wear. So totally understand that aspect. One of my friends, Rachel Evans, I met her at a conference in, I can't remember which conference it was. She's bloody brilliant. But she said, I ordered a regular monitor, but when it turned up, they accidentally sent me the kind that projects a terminal onto your face. So I become a hacker.
Oh,
That was a brilliant answer, isn't it? But that really sets the tone. Like, a lot of people believe that security and hacking is this like elite skill where you type into a terminal and it blows the world up. You know, it's like this, oh my goodness. So what was it? Sailor Moon? Wasn't it in the 90s? Like, Sailor Moon had like a floppy disk and just like, you know, oh, what was it? I think it was like used to hack something, or it takes, maybe I'm remembering the meme and not the show, I don't remember. But it was just so funny, all of these like perceptions. Like, I really loved the show Criminal Minds. Super inaccurate. And Penelope and her hacking, I was so inspired by Penelope. She was this like private woman hacker, and she would like hack into things all the time. I mean, it's quite recent, so I knew it was inaccurate, but I still absolutely loved her. So I could totally see from an outside point of view, thinking that's all hacking is, and thinking these people are these magical, mythical unicorn people that can, like, you know that show Heroes years ago, where they had that.
I liked Heroes, yeah.
Yeah, they had that little kid. He could like touch computers and like talk to them, and they do stuff. Do you remember that? It was the little kid.
Yeah, I thought it was good.
But like that's that perception. That's that perception of like, oh, it's this super elite thing. But actually, most of the time, it's people focused.
Yeah. Because I remember, to the first time I remember really paying any attention to any of this sort of stuff was Hackers. Do you remember the film Hackers with Angelina Jolie? I think it was like 1990.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're whizzing around with these whacking great big gaming laptops on rollerblades and like plugging into public telephones, and they wore baggy cyber trousers with tassels on. And then from there, obviously we started going raving, so we'd start going, you know, warehouse parties and whatever else, and we were then wearing the trousers that they were wearing, and you think, yeah, like I'm basically a hacker. Like I dressed like a hacker, like I was skating at the time. And then I remember I finally found out that my stepdad was an information security manager for TNT, and I was like, you're boring as hell. No way. This hackers told me it was like this, and now like no, I don't want to be in security. And then I got into that, you know, concept that everything is really technical, and it's only been the last sort of 5-10 years that it's become apparent that actually, you know, it's a vibrant industry full of some really, really cool people doing some really fascinating things. You know, and you can wear a hoodie to work.
Well, it depends. It does depend.
Not in an exec meeting. I'll put a shirt on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wearing a hoodie at the minute, but it's not black this time. It's a charcoal grey. So
it's like a summer hoodie. So how do you feel like in the last, so let's say the 5 years that, like, technically speaking, you've actually had a proper job title involving security, do you think the industry's getting better, particularly for women? So we've interviewed a couple of women on here, and there's still that perception for me that it's a very male focused industry. I saw some clips from InfoSec last year or the year before, and it just looked bad. You know, there was some of the stands with women in, you know, like boxing ring gear, trying to get people over, everyone drinking beer. I don't know, it didn't look like an inviting, friendly place to be. Do you think that the industry is getting better? Do you think that we're moving away from the old men mentality?
I think there's a few different things on that. So I'll give you two perspectives. First perspective, anytime any of my partners, colleagues, or friends find out what I do for a living, the first thing they say to me is, isn't that a boy's job? Or isn't that like kind of a male's industry? Or isn't that, dominated by men? And they're not trying to be mean, mind you. They're not being like, you can't do it. They're just more, how do you do that? Like, isn't it hard or whatever? And so I do believe that perception is still quite dominant in thinking, well, that's a male-dominated industry. And when I started, I was told by somebody I care about, and who cares about me, that they didn't want me to go into this industry because they didn't think it would be a healthy culture. And that was said with love, not trying to discourage me, but it was interesting, and I did see that a lot. So a decade ago, even just working in IT or whatever, I did get a lot of responses of second guessing my work. I did get, if I was perceived as male on anything, I actually found it a lot easier. When I owned my own business, I would have clients that didn't stay with me, that I would be in a meeting with them and I'd be talking to them, and they would direct all of their responses and all of their questions to in some situation I'd bring a consultant with me because they know some technology better than I do, or I'm hiring them to help with the work because it's a big workload, blah, blah, blah. And they would direct all of their questions to the male, and I just get so frustrated, and I'd be like, bloody hell, like, do you think our brains are wired differently? Like, what is this foolishness? And I'd struggle a lot. Like, I had one situation where I was given an interview, and I was given an interview because my CV impressed the interviewer, and which I didn't find out till after. But my colleague said to me, you got that interview because you're female and you're the only female that applied. And I was quite hurt by that because I, got on with that person. But I also was like, maybe that's true. Maybe I did just get the interview because I'm female. Maybe I'm just a diversity point. But I think that perception that, we get special treatment, or there's so few women that they prioritize them, is really foolish, because actually you are working harder. So I think the perception from the outside in is that it's male dominated, is that, it's not getting better, so on and so forth. But from my internal view, I have a private chat that I talk with women coming into technology. So anytime they come to me and like, oh, they want to be mentored, or they want to have, kind of help or answer questions, and this is a chat with quite a few women, and they're all really impressive. They all have really impressive CVs, and they're really brilliant, and they're coming into industry. I have a huge community of female colleagues that are either have been in industry longer than I have, or just starting out, or have been around the same amount of time. And that's not a small community anymore. When I started, I couldn't find anybody to look up to or to be mentored by, and I felt really disheartened. And then I moved to the UK, and I found people like Dr. Jessica Barker. I have people like Lisa Fort, who I was just talking about earlier, like all of these really impressive women that are in the industry, breaking those boundaries and just being really, really cool. Then there was two other women that I really, really like, Steph and Trisha, and they were all over the way over in America. But I'm looking at them and I'm looking at what they've achieved, and I'm like, there's no way this can be a male dominated I mean, maybe there is more men now, or still, maybe there is, but ultimately, that, to my point of view, it's like, just because there's more doesn't mean that there's not this huge community of women. Because when I look at my social media, I see a fudge ton of women. When I look at my connections in industry, I see a lot of women. You know, maybe we're just not looking in the right place, or maybe the women aren't the ones that are being praised, but whereas there's so many bloody brilliant women out there, and there's so many that I daily get to interact with, that I think it's inaccurate to say, you know, it's a male's industry. I think where we're looking is what's, you know, that perception of where we're looking is the issue, that we actually have to go that extra effort to find those women, because once you do, you'll realize they're not just, you know, analysts, or they're not just, you know, some women that got into industry. There's some bloody brilliant women out there that are much more senior than you even imagine, you know, that much more experienced than you realize. So I think I would say there's a mix. There is a lot of men, but we're not looking at the right places to see all of the women.
I like that, because I see we see a lot. Well, I see a lot of people, a lot of women in my feed. I'm seeing more and more. So we had Eliza May Austin on before.
Yes, she's lovely.
Ladies of London Hacking Society, and you know, she's brilliant. I say Lisa Fort is always obviously a lot of stuff coming out from Lisa Fort. And in the privacy world, you've got Ivana Bortoletti, you've got Nina Brakovic. There's a wealth of incredibly smart thought leaders, and technology leaders out there. But yeah, there still seems to be this perception that, I think it's possibly more of an information security than a cybersecurity thing. You know, this grey hair, white shirt, suit. It's still that sort of middle-aged man on the golf course kind of industry. Whereas actually, I think the move to cybersecurity, as it tends to be more widely accepted, is starting to see that diversity coming through, and it's almost like it's creating its own different industry if you're looking in the right places, and then you can start to see it. So it's good to see.
And one thing I would argue is also it takes that extra effort to go and look for it, but also it takes people like Wolf or Scott Helm or Troy Hunt to, you know, recognize the people. Like, I remember one time I got a message from Scott, and he's just like, I'd really like you to join me to do this, or I think you'd be a really good person to speak here. And he connected me with those opportunities, and he, you know, because, you know, he might have got the opportunity, but he kind of stepped back and said, no, this is actually better for this person, you know. So it takes those people to make that maybe introduction, and I think that's also what's helping move it along, you know. It's those people that are in that position of, I mean, you can call it power, you can call it privilege, you can call it whatever you want, but it takes them to also recognize that there's somebody out there that looks differently, but actually can do a really, really good job, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So accepting that just because you've been offered an opportunity doesn't necessarily mean you're the best person for the job. And actually, it doesn't matter who that person is, but if there's somebody else, having the gumption to say, do you know what, this person's better than me.
Yeah, and removing that ego. And I think that that's an issue. I think I like to say to people that actually cybersecurity is quite immature. Like, if you look at the financial industry, it's been around for how long? You know, it has how many regulations, how many standards, how much things it has to follow, whereas the information technology, information security, cybersecurity is quite young. It doesn't have the same standards, it doesn't have the same requirements. We're moving towards that, we're maturing over time, but to be perfectly honest, it's quite immature. And so it's understandable that it's got some growth that needs to happen. It's understandable that sometimes people like to be a bit of a gatekeeper, and it only takes somebody else to say, that's wrong, you shouldn't do that, or I don't agree with that. And if I say something like that, you've noticed actually, if you look at my talk videos, recorded conference talks, I'll get couple boys on there, and I call them boys on purpose. They're not mature. They'll get on there and they'll create, and they'll know, this is the best part, they'll know what they're saying is like mean-spirited and have no benefit, because they'll create fake accounts and they'll go on there and tell me how horrible I am, how stupid I am, how horrible my talk is, and I'll be like, do you know what, like, that's not okay. I'm not okay with that. You're being foolish. I could say that all I want, they're still going to think it. It's when somebody they respect, or somebody of that's seen as, you know, an authority on it, it says, no, that's wrong, you can't do that, that's not appropriate. That's when the change happens. And maybe it doesn't happen to them right away, but maybe over time it kind of breaks them down. Or that sounds negative, but or maybe they just, you know, people recognize them for who they are. A lot of times envy, but you know, it's frustrating, but it does take that other person to validate me almost. I know that I talk about validation a lot, but it's kind of true. Like, I can talk about how brilliant I am as much as I want. I won't, because that's really awkward. But until somebody else is going to validate me, it's not really going to be seen as anything, you know, if that makes sense. It's like just me stroking my own ego. You know, you have to get that external point. Anyway.
Well, yeah, everybody needs to be respected by their peers. Self-proclaimed thought leaders, you know, just like nobody else thinks that your thoughts are good, so you can't just label yourself as a thought leader if you've never actually caused anyone to think in a different way. And it's kind of way.
Also, anybody that's like self-proclaimed, usually it seems a bit odd, because there is, like, you're right, there has to be, if there's nobody else that's like, actually that makes sense, then there might be a reason for that.
It was crap.
I mean, I don't want to say that, but maybe do some research.
It does. It's like I get the validation thing, and I fully understand where you're coming from. When I was younger, I struggled with being liked, fitting in, having a set of friends. So I ended up, you know, disparate all over the place, and I spent a lot of my early 20s looking for validation from girlfriends, looking for validation from people, just wanting to be liked and wanting somebody to tell you that, you know, you're all right. Like that's a good thing. And I still struggle with it today. You know, I like it when somebody comments on a post or a video and says that's good, or messages me and says thank you, because it's like, okay, this is like, I can take that, like I've done something good today, and that's nice. But the whole thing about pushing people up and pushing people forward fascinates me, because the three people in my life that pushed my career to where it is were all women, and every single time they were bosses who gave me a chance when somebody else didn't want to, or somebody else didn't think I was the right person for the job, or I couldn't take on that task. And every single time it was those women who went, no, like, I'm saying he can do it, and he's going to do it. So I have this admiration for women who take on those jobs of seniority and excuse me, and go through the things that they've had to go through to get there, but then also pass that back on to somebody else and say, do you know what, like, they can do the job. And every time I've done it, and I've excelled, and I've been pleased for it. So it's nice when you start seeing it coming from somewhere else, and people stepping aside and letting somebody come in to do a better job. So it's 100%. I get what you mean. I fully get what you mean.
Well, I think that's a really big point. Is I really, as I said, I really like studying human behavior. I love psychology. I think psychologists are just bloody brilliant, and I wish I was as great as them to understand humans. But the thing that gets me is a lot of the time, the people that are attacking, the people that are pushing other people down, they're doing it because they're envious. You know, they have no right to be jealous, but they think they should be there without putting the work in, for example. And, you know, they also often have very low self-esteem. Like, one thing I thought was interesting about extreme narcissism, as I was talking about earlier, is the more I learn about it, the more miserable I find out these people are. Like, if you have extreme narcissism, it's because you crave that adoration, that attention, that, it's not even you want positive attention, you just need attention. It's an addiction. And it's because that's how you're validating yourself, like, it's not a healthy amount of validation. It's gotten to the extreme. It's very unhealthy. And so it's interesting to me. And actually, when I get attacked like that online, I do get angry, or I do get upset, and I do question. And a lot of times, like, for example, one talk I sent to one of my friends, I said, I mean, I didn't think this was that bad. Like, why is it being attacked so much? Like, I know I'm not the best speaker in the world. I know I'm not the most brilliant person, but my goal is to spread knowledge, to educate, and to help people, and share the knowledge that I've learned. So I think it's quite negative to say this is horrible, but if it is really horrible, should I not done it? Like, give me feedback. And these are people that I, respect, and they'll be like, no, like, they'll give me feedback where needed, but they'll say, what you said is true, and it's valid. And then I think, well, then why are they attacking me? And then I realize it's not usually personal. Sometimes it is targeted, but a lot of times it's not. It's actually just somebody that really wishes that they were in that position, or it's somebody that thinks they know better. I had somebody come to my talk and tell me how absolute shit I was. Like, I had this guy once come to my talk, and then afterwards didn't come back up to me. He left me feedback saying how he didn't learn a thing from my talk. And I was like, I laughed a bit, because I was like, my talk was about learning other people's like seeing the value of other people's diverse points of view, and like seeing different experiences. And he apparently learned absolutely nothing from my talk. Because he knows everything. But then I'd have people come up to me after and be like, I really appreciated that, this and this. And it's interesting to me, because I have to realize that a lot of the times these pushing down people think that pushing others down raises them, but actually it does the complete opposite and makes them worse off, and it makes them more ignorant and less useful even. I mean, if your view in security is this is the only way, perfection is the only way to achieve this, and you have to do it with this point of view, then you're going to have massive gaps. You're going to have things you didn't consider. I mean, I'm not perfect. There are things I miss, and somebody else can be like, Zoe, this is a massive issue. And be like, oh shit, I didn't even think of that. I mean, my very first conference talk was on network configuration management. I had a lot of fun. It was a shit talk, but I
link below.
Yeah, well, no, go to it. I've got it linked on my website. Like, go ahead and watch it. I was bloody terrified. It was a lot of fun. But the thing about it was, I wrote this really shit script to, all it did was read in. So syslog was sent to this Python script, well, the syslog server, and the Python script picked it up, put it on the website to show every configuration change, and it was just a random shit script I wrote to like show the reason that's important. Like, if somebody goes in and changes the configuration of your server, you should probably know that, you should probably keep track of that. It was so vulnerable. Like, so vulnerable. One person after is like, that's vulnerable to SQL injection. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm aware of that. Like, it's not well written. Don't ever put this in on your environment. But it was, but I literally wrote it to learn Python. I wrote it to learn, I did know a bit about SQL at the time. I wrote it to learn PHP and create a website. I still don't know PHP, to be fair, but so maybe it wasn't that good. But it was, for me, it was interesting because I was learning something, I was applying what I did know, and somebody else, if I really wanted to use it, somebody else that's skilled in that was needed. That diverse skill was needed to make it a better solution. And reality is that's all security is. It's diversity. It's layering on controls and processes and practices. It's looking from the human point of view and understanding how that can be exploited. It's not saying I'm right and you're wrong, you're stupid, I know everything, don't do what you're doing because you're the weakest link. It's actually saying, what's your workflow? How can I build a solution that works for you and empowers you to do security without thinking? That's what security is.
I like that a lot. That's an awesome way of doing it. Yeah, and you're right. It is. It's about understanding what the challenges that people face and how it affects them. We talk a lot when we do gap analysis. We were onboarding a new client the other day, and we were saying we don't need to know everything that you do. And she said, "Oh, well, we're going to put these people in front of you for the initial chat. So, do you want to speak to anybody like the frontline people?" And I was like, "Well, like, yeah." Because your IT team will tell me that this is what everyone does and this is how everyone's working remotely. And then your frontline teams will tell me how they actually work remotely, because it may be that it just doesn't work. And actually their broadband isn't strong enough and the VPN keeps dropping out. So they've just been doing it on their desktop and then emailing stuff over at the end of the day, or using their partner's laptop in between the kids doing their schoolwork or whatever it is. Like, what you think is happening isn't necessarily what is happening. So making sure that you understand the people aspect of it and how people approach stuff is really important.
So vital. And I mean, that's what shadow IT is. It's technology that was put in place because the actual processes, the proper processes, couldn't be followed because they couldn't get their bloody work done. Sorry, my ferret is currently attacking my cable. Oh, no.
Do we get to see the ferret? I'm looking like I can see the ferret. Like
I don't know.
I'm on a...
I think she's run away from me. So apparently some ferrets actually eat cables. My ferrets don't eat cables. Do you know what they eat? Do you know cable management, like the Velcro?
Yeah.
They destroy that. I don't know why. But
they just like disorder.
Yeah, I think so. I think that. Well, I mean, they're ferrets. They're mischievous thieves. That's what they are.
Why the obsession with ferrets?
Why the obsession? They're bloody cool. I mean, I'll be honest. I view a ferret as nature's hacker. He's looking at. I think it's my boy. Yeah. There we go. I'm here. This is Seven. He is very sweet. I'll put him in the camera. He's very sweet. He's got one swollen eye. It's actually normal, but it makes him look half tired. It's so cute. But no, so ferrets are very intelligent. They're very mischievous. They break into anything. They steal anything and everything. And if you don't want them to do something, the worst thing you can do is stop them from doing it. You actually have to distract them with something else. Because if you don't, they will go out of their way to continuously do that thing. They're brilliant. But ferrets, my very first ferret I had when I was in a horrible relationship, and she helped me get through it and was with me for all the years that I was in recovery, and they've just been a huge part of my life. So
they sound like they're like basically furry toddlers.
Yeah,
whatever you don't want them to do, they're going to do, and then they're going to destroy everything that gets in between it.
Yeah, so I had one ferret that she was the Houdini of ferrets. Like, she could get out of anything. I had to put a lock, like, those TSA locks. I had to put a lock on her kennel, otherwise, like on her cage, otherwise she could open it. Yeah, she is wonderful, but so terrible.
So you make part of your team. See, this is a film in itself, isn't it? Like hacking, but with ferrets, like you can strap stuff to their back, like little bags.
So here's the thing. My two girl ferrets, they're from a family of ferrets that pull cables. They have a job. They're worker ferrets.
Really?
They'll pull cabling. So apparently there's this building in London that was cabled with ferrets, which is really cool. That's one of the things they used to do. If you look it up, their spines are very unique, and so they can bend. So that when they go down, their spine actually stretches, so they don't have to lose any speed. And they can go through really, really tight spaces. They're quite aggressive animals, and so they're hunters as well. And so they can, attack and deal with mice. So they deal with mice, they steal everything. They're pretty much nature's hackers. Like, so cool, way cooler than I am. Maybe that's my obsession. I want to stay in their spotlight.
Ferrets are your spirit animal.
Yes, totally. Do you know, I actually did take notes. I know you said it's more of a pub talk, but I did actually take notes, and I am not touching on any of the things I wrote. I hope I'm still touching on all the points you want.
Do you know what? I have thoroughly enjoyed it. Like, as long as you think you've covered anything that you think is cool, then that's all that matters. Like I say, it's like there's this perception, I think, in the industry and out in the world that privacy professionals are stuffy and we're all activists and we're all very, very serious people, and all security people are either old men with grey hair and white shirts or 14-year-olds who sit in their bedroom with their hood up and have no physical interaction with anybody and just do everything through the dark net and chat rooms. So all this series was ever about was just going like, these are the people that you might see on LinkedIn, these are the people that you see doing chats, but they're always doing a topic. It's always like, oh, tell me about this, tell me about this. And this was about, no, just tell us everything, like, just tell us who you are, tell us where you've come from, so people can see that actually we're all just normal people.
Yeah.
We are sat next to you in the pub.
I mean, let's be honest, I am not super elite, cool, whatever. I think that out of all the people, I'm quite boring. I think the value of what I bring is not that I'm this cool person. It's that I can talk on a lot of different points of view and topics. Not all of them, mind you, but I can. I've had a lot of experience. And I think that the true value of a tech, the actual thing that they bring to it is knowing what technology can do and how it can be abused, and taking that knowledge and applying it to threat maps, to different threat scenarios, to different situations. Like, for example, I worked with high profile, ultra high net worth individuals previously. Their threat map is very different than like an everyday person. I have friends in the sex work industry. Their threat map is very different than mine. But I can help them with certain things and different considerations. And then I say to them, go and see this person, because I know that they've have similar experience and they know kind of that context. So I think the ethical side of ethical hacking, the ethical side of cybersecurity is knowing what you can do, but also knowing your limitations and approaching every situation with this concept that you're given temporary access to somebody's intimate life details, and it's your responsibility to do everything you can to help them either program something securely or architect a solution securely, and do it as best as you can with all of your experiences, but also recognizing those risks of, I've never been in this situation, or I have a limitation in this. I'm not a developer. I would never say that I know everything about the secure development lifecycle. I, however, have consulted and worked with developers, so I can say these are the things that I would consider. However, learn more. These are common risks or issues with the network architecture, because I understand networks. This is what I would consider when I'm building the solution around that. I would add that, but I'd also say, and these are resources that you can do to learn more, or these are the people that know more about this than I do, and that getting over my ego is so vital to being a professional in this industry.
But that's what makes you cool. That's what makes it interesting, because I think for a lot of people watching this, so my daughter, for instance, is 7, and she's obsessed with hackers and anonymous, because it's all because of YouTube, I presume. But she loves not manipulating people, but she loves working out how she can get people to do the things that she wants them to do. And then she also likes teaching people how to do things that she's got wrong. And you know what? I think the skills that people think they need to get into this industry aren't necessarily the skills that you need. And actually being a people person and having that understanding of how people work and having an interest in people and wanting to help people are just as important as having the like a technical interest, because some things can be learned and some things are just natural.
Oh, 100%. And that diversity is so vital, because, and this is the part that really frustrates me, is when people say, well, ethnic diversity is not going to make a difference. Yeah, but cultural and ethnic diversity is going to make a huge difference, because they've had a different life than you. Like, I can talk to my male colleagues, and if they've never seen sexism, a lot of the time they'll be like, it doesn't exist. I can talk about racism as much as I want, but I'm not going to have seen as much as my friend Steph has. It's just, it's unfair for me to say, oh, I'm the authority on this. I'm a white woman, okay? I'm not going to have seen as much as she has. And so actually stepping back and saying, no, this person is more qualified is so important, because that's going to make a difference. Consider dating apps that are designed for like Grindr, for its great example. That app has been misused to target gay men and harm them. The Cairo police used it once, because whilst it's not illegal, they used it to find people to then target them for other things. In America, it was used to harm and assault and rob a guy. Those threats are very real, and if you've not been in that situation, you might miss them, and it could actually have highly very bad consequences. It could take somebody's life. I mean, a really good book, actually. I love audiobooks. I listened to it a while back. It's called Fishing Dark Waters, and it's by Christopher Hagnegi, actually, and Michelle Fincher, I think is her surname. And it talks about that point you just made about manipulation. It talks about social engineering as a scale between influence to manipulation, and they both, at the end of the day, they both may lead to the same end goal, but it's how you got there and why you got there that's important. The influences, we influence people all the time. We want to influence our clients to choose a better solution for them, and so we kind of help guide them along the way with the goal of spreading awareness, education, and a better solution for them. Whereas a malicious person may cause somebody to take an action that may not seem negative, but it benefits that person instead of the person they're helping, if that makes sense. It's getting them to take an action that benefits them, not benefits their client or friend or acquaintance. That was the word I was trying to say.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's goes back to your point about the other side, the dark side of it all, which is where you can use this knowledge and skill for your own personal gain, and for nefarious purposes, rather than using it for the greater good. And it's just nice that there are people in the world that do want to use it for the right reasons and do use it for the right reasons, and it's becoming more widely accepted that's a good thing. It's a good thing to do and a good approach to take. So
And I think as the industry matures and awareness and understanding increases on what actually is cybersecurity, I think that's only going to benefit, because I've been in situations where I've come into a company or a client or, I think my camera just shut off. One sec. Sorry. It said I'm done. It doesn't want to talk to me anymore.
You've had enough.
Yeah. I don't know why it's died. Anyway, whatever. Oh, I think it's turning on again. Yay! I don't know. I think my camera's bored. I think I just put it to sleep. Poor camera. I'm really sorry. I think that as it matures, that's going to make a big difference, because, as I was saying, I've come into situations where the person in place at the moment has been very, I know more than you, and don't bother me with these stupid questions, and there's quite a negative feeling. And then I'll come in, not say that I'm amazing or anything, but I'll come in, I'll be that friendly face. And I've actually had people say, your kindness and your ability to explain it for an idiot, which I think is a really awful way of describing it, but simplifying it in a non-technical way so that we're speaking the same bloody language, that ability is actually what's making me more secure, because now I understand the context and I'm starting to care about it. I mean, Troy Hunt's Have I Been Pwned? I mean, that was a huge, huge move for the industry, because now people don't have to know what the darknet is, really. The dark web, or whatever you want to call it. They don't need to know and keep up on all of these different breaches and everything. What they can do is they can go to his website and use a very easy to understand, register their email or their domain, and it sends them notifications when something happens. That was a massive move for the industry. I mean, Scott Helm, my friend, he has like security headers. So if you have a website, you can go type in that domain and it scans it and identifies which ones you're missing. And then he's got a fudge ton of information on what that means, what that context is. Like those sort of resources that are designed for the non-technical. They're designed to say, this is a technical concept and this is what it means to you. Those are what make the industry better. Those are actually what's making people more secure. It's not that gatekeeping, I'm so brilliant, listen and do everything I tell you and don't ask questions. All that does is make people really scared, really confused, and take no bloody action whatsoever.
It's very true. I do like Have I Been Pwned, actually. It's one of my favourite things to point people to whenever I do training. Like, go and have a look. And you see them all at lunchtime, like, yeah, you've all been done. Like, it's not.
Well, okay, this is the coolest part and the most exciting bit for me whenever it comes to talking about cybersecurity awareness training is I did this program. I had the freedom to build this program once, and it was so cool. Essentially, I taught non-technical people how to hack so that they could better understand, not to do it privately, not to be able to build a hacker army, mind you. It was all ethical and legal, but it was so they could understand how simple these sophisticated attacks were and how simple it was to create a phishing campaign, for example. And what that led to was people talking about, I just read this breach and this happened, and knowing what that meant was so exciting for them. I had one lady coming up to me and she's like, I've been found in 5 breaches, and not, oh my gosh, I'm so ashamed. It was like, this is cool and this is what I did. And I was like, I'm so impressed with you. Like, that's awesome. And then another example is we got to do password cracking. And so every month we would crack passwords and we'd display this word cloud of all the passwords that were cracked. And it wasn't this name and shame. I didn't say, look at this shit. I said, these are the passwords that were cracked and this is why. This is what I would recommend. And then we'd have people in the audience being like, that's mine. And they laughed about it, but it was because that shame was removed. They understood what the importance was. And they were like, okay, give me that feedback. Tell me how to fix that, because I thought that was right. Clearly it's not. How do I get better? And it was so rewarding. That was like the greatest moment of my life, essentially. Like, to be able to see people look at security without fear and be like, okay, what does that mean? Help me. That was great. That was wonderful. I wish that was the culture of every awareness program.
But you're making it accessible, though, aren't you? You're not telling somebody off. You're not, like you say, you're not making them feel called out, or you're not making them feel ashamed or something. It's just like, look, everybody does this, and look, here's a massive list. There's always been instances in the privacy industry where you'll see people post on LinkedIn saying, I've just seen this privacy notice, or I've just seen this consent thing, and it's utter rubbish. So I've emailed them to tell them that it's absolute crap, and they've ignored me. And maybe that's why. Like, maybe if you emailed them and said, oh, I've noticed this, here's some guidance around what it should look like, you might want to have a look at it, and these are the benefits, then people will listen. If you just flat out go at people and say, like, you're an idiot, this is shit, people don't want to hear it. Like, people don't want to be spoken to in that way. It's how you approach it is massively important.
And that's why that people side, that ability to empathize, I can't say that word apparently, ability to empathize with people is so vital. Because if you're just this robot telling people that they're stupid, all that's going to do is then be like, you're a jerk. Like, you can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you're not sharing it in an accessible way, you're just a jerk.
It's very true. Very true. Make it accessible, make it friendly, and people might actually listen to what you've got to say.
Maybe. They don't always. Oh, my I think it's just too hot. Maybe it's really hot in here. That could probably be it. But I think I think that's part. I mean, that doesn't always work, mind you. I've had issues with one company. I had a company that they asked me for very sensitive information over email. And I said, I'm not comfortable sending that over email. Can I send it through a secure file share? They didn't respond. So I sent them a link through a secure file share that I have and said, I will give you this password over another channel. And they decided to yell at me. They called me and yelled at me for 30 minutes about how awful a person I was and how they've never had a problem with any other person and it's all me. And I'm sat there like, this is what I do for a living. Okay, I know how insecure that this is, and I'm not okay, and I'm not comfortable with you sharing this information on this channel because it's not safe. And instead of listening, they just screamed at me and then manipulated me, they think they did anyway, into giving them on a different channel, which I am 99% confident that they then shared over email because of how ridiculous they were afterwards. And if I was a non-technical person, I probably wouldn't identify that issue. If I was somebody with very low self-confidence, which I used to have really severe lack of confidence, and I'm not saying I'm the most confident person now either. I deal with being terrified I'm wrong all the time and terrified I'm not good enough. I mean, that's the human condition, isn't it? And I would have, if that had happened to me maybe 2-3 years ago, I would have been in tears and like so sad and like so question my own intelligence. And it was such a negative. If I had any opportunity, my camera's like so dead now. If I had any opportunity, I probably would never go with them again. But unfortunately, in this situation, I had no option. I had to use their services. But they will have a subject access request in their near future. So there's that.
Do it. Like, it's the best. We don't advocate it in any way, but it's the best tool for annoyance.
But here's the thing that really frustrates me is if they had just listened to me, they would have gotten free, expensive advice Like, I've been called into many clients and they pay a lot more for the advice that I was willing to give them for free, but yet instead they acted like I was the problem. And I'm like, I'm using your services. I'm your client. I'm your consumer. Listen to your consumer.
Yeah, but we don't need to do that because we know what we're doing. Who are you coming here giving us information?
Yeah, free information that has a high value.
Yeah, exactly.
You bloody monster.
Cool. Right, I'm gonna let you go.
Yeah.
If I because I feel like I could talk to you for hours. But
my camera is not having it.
I'm just dying, and you've actually got work to do.
Yeah, there's that.
That was awesome. Really, really interesting. Like, it's been brilliant having you on. If people want to find you, like, not find you as in like to abuse you, but find you for information and insights, we'll put your LinkedIn below. Are you on the Twitter?
I am on the Twitterverse, RoseSecOps.
RoseSecOps.
Or there is also Ferrets-SecOps, if you want to learn about ferret security. Yeah, but yeah, so I'm on Ferrets-SecOps on Twitter, or just RoseSecOps on Twitter, also Ferrets-SecOps, or you can also just look at my website. I think I've got links to it all. It's just rosesec.com.
Okay, well, we'll stick all of that down in the description below, so make sure you go and have a look at that. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching. Obviously, if you enjoy it, like, subscribe, do all the things that you do, because it helps us get all of these videos out to a much wider channel and much wider audience. If people of YouTube see that people are enjoying them, so please do go and do that. But for now, Zoe, thank you very, very much for coming on. That was a lot of fun. And I'm no doubt that we'll see you again in the near future. But enjoy the rest of your day.
Yeah, you too.
Enjoy the Ferrets.
I've got to wake them up soon because they're having a nap. So.
We'll talk to you soon.
Anyway, cheers.
Cheers.